Hey everybody, Or here, and today I want to go over some basic concepts in rhythm composition. These are concepts that I've been thinking about for years and teaching in private lessons and bass masterclasses, and I thought I'll try and organize my thoughts in this video. So I have this very visual approach to thinking about the classical roles of kick, snare, and hi-hat in rhythm compositions, and I think about rhythm in general as sort of the groundwork for the arrangement. So you can think about it as if we're designing a room or a space, and manipulating the different elements like subdivision and spacing between beats sort of designs the size of the room and dictates how fast time is going. And all of these elements have an effect on how we feel when we listen to a groove. So hopefully this would make sense as the video goes along and you'll understand why this metaphor works, and enjoy the video. Now, just to start, I want to lay out the basics. These are maybe obvious things to some of you, but I think it's always nice to kind of remind ourselves of what we're dealing with. So, if you don't know by now, Beat Scholar, each beat is represented by a circle, like a pizza, and you can fill in the beats in order to create your grooves. Fantastic. But the main thing I want to talk about is understanding the basic functionality of the instruments themselves. So we have kick, snare, and hi-hats as the basic instruments that we usually compose rhythm with. And the way I like to think about it is that the kick and snare, the role is to dissect the bar and basically create reference points within the bar. So in this case, dictating important beats and creating also reference points for the entire arrangement. So for keys and bass and melodies and all that stuff. With the hi-hat being a sort of a timekeeping instrument, whether it's hi-hat or percussion, and it has the important role of letting you know how fast time is passing. So you get the idea, and you've probably composed kick, snare, and hi-hats before, but this is a sort of a baseline approach that I take, and I describe it to people as the kick and snare dictating space and size. So meaning the distance between a kick and a snare creates a sort of reference for how big, I call it the room, so how big the room is. And the hi-hat being a sense of time, so equating, beat making to four-dimensional space. In that way, I can sort of manipulate the feeling that I'm after and do something like put a snare on the third beat and do like a halftime feel. 2, 4, 1. Take a hi-hat and sort of experiment. So this is a bigger room, so to speak, with time flowing through it quite fast, and then I can do something cool like this. Playing a very big beat with a lot of time going between the kick and the snare, but having the hi-hat playing very tight and close together creates this anxious feeling. A sort of, you want stuff to happen already. And that also makes you kind of move your body as you're expecting the next hit to happen. You're sort of making the listener keep time with, their own mind, which is something cool. If you give too much information in the beat, there's really nothing to expect. And then I find that, it affects your willingness to kind of bob your head and you're kind of being fed the entire rhythmic information instead of creating this sense of, oh yeah, I really want that snare to hit, and when it hits it feels good, and then you're kind of making up the time in between by moving your body and reacting to it. So I don't know if that's exact for everybody, but that's the way I feel it. So I want to dive deeper into the roles of the kick and snare within a simple beat, and we'll get to the hi-hat again in a second, so I'm going to mute it. And now let's do something cool. Let's start by dividing these lines into 4. So we have the entire 16 notes mapped here on both kick and snare. And I'm going to start just by doing just random placements here. You'll understand in a second why I'm doing this. I might even understand it as well. There we go. So remember what I said about giving a sense of space and dictating how big the room is. In this kind of groove, you really have a feeling of being, somewhere that's really tight or trying to get away. I like depicting things in a very visual manner, and I think that creates like the right emotional context for me, hopefully for you guys as well. So once I cue in the hi-hat as well, the hi-hat creates such a good balance. When you're making your beat, no matter which genre, whether it's progressive metal or hip-hop, you want to have an element that's the organizer and that allows other elements to be very expressive and to move freely along. While I'm keeping the hi-hat as straight eights, it gives me a lot of freedom to mess around with the locations of the snares. So I'm just gonna do it while the audio is playing, just for fun. Now check out what happens when I start messing around with the hi-hat as well in the same kind of way. Now, for my taste, this is also pretty cool, but there is something about this beat that wouldn't serve a song unless the song was really, predicated and based on the feeling that something is shifting around. This is almost gives like a Latin music feel to it because of a sort of a clave feeling in the kick and snare, and the hi-hat playing very linearly. It plays well towards those kind of genres of music where the rhythm is sort of more feels like individual instruments interlacing rather than a kit playing together. So now I want to double down on what I said before and research deeper into this room that I described. So as I mentioned, you have the sense of how quickly time is going by and the sense of how big the room is. That's the way I like to think about these things. I want to keep the kick and snare on the 1 and 3, and I want to see what I can do with the hi-hat, what kind of time sensations I can give, and what subdivisions contribute to what sensation. Now, as I said, the kick and snare now on the 1 and 3 would give the sense that the room is big, so we're dealing with a lot of space and a lot of areas to explore in between the major beats. I'm just going to take down the tempo a bit. Now check this out. I'm just going to start by dividing the beat into 2. So I'm going to press 2 here and fill up the beats real quick. Let's do some dynamics so we're not bored. So now, we're moving along. Let's do 4. Oh, sorry about that. Let's do 8 just for fun. So now, aside from sounding like a sprinkler, the subdivision of 8, like 30-second notes, creates something pretty interesting here. It is something that a drummer would do, to sort of a 2-stroke on the hi-hat to double the speed. And what it creates is the sense of trying to push the tempo forward. So if I move it to the second beat, watch what happens, or listen. So now this artifact here would create the sense of anticipation and sort of pushing the music forward towards the snare. So check it out. So you can think about it like this. Narrowing down the subdivision and creating a tense feeling before a major beat creates this sense of anticipation that I keep talking about and makes the beat, the downbeat in this case, the snare, feel more substantial. The next level here would be the subdivisions that I kind of skipped over, like 3 and 6 and 5. They have a very special place, and in the concept of 4/4 music that's usually based on the standard subdivisions of 2/4/8, 16, whatever. These uneven subdivisions have a unique role. They can make time feel like it's laid back or being pushed forward. So let's research that. So let's take this beat that's divided into 30-second notes here and put a triplet instead and listen to what happens. So you immediately notice that the fact that it's a triplet makes the time feel like it's moving slower at that part. And the fact that it's on an empty beat even accentuates that even more. So let's copy the 16th note here and see what happens when I place this before the major beat here, before the 1 of the bar. So it almost, just before the 1, there's this sort of slowing down and then the beat picks back up. And this is a very unique spice that you can use in the context of music that usually moves in 2s and 4s. If you use it too much, like if I do this, it sort of loses its power because the sense of time is more leaning towards triplets. We can do the opposite thing and have most of them triplets and then have a group of 4, and it sounds like this. So this, I don't know, this reminds me of a person trying to balance, like holding a bunch of, I don't know, logs or heavy objects and trying to move along a straight line. Just to give context again, these concepts, while maybe basic, just having a firm understanding of them can really sort of bring up what you're doing. So instead of just relying on your intuition, you can actually give the right sensation leading up to a beat or leading up to the 1 of the bar. Let's keep going. Let's see what happens in the subdivision of 5. Let's just listen to 5 because it's something many people don't have really any frame of reference of what it sounds like. So definitely my personal favorite in terms of odd subdivisions. It does have that 16th note feeling, but with a slight wonkiness of the 3 and 6. I gave it some dynamics to make it cooler, but for me it's sort of a hybrid groove, just because of that feeling of stretched time that it gives. It's almost like awkward, but it keeps landing on the right beat, and I think it just feels great. Combining it with standard 16th notes, it sounds like this. I don't know how to describe it. It's both laid back and pushes forward at the same time. I just love it. It's wonderful. And using it on the hi-hat is usually more advisable than anything else. If you base your entire music on it, you might have to do some quirky things in the kick and snare if you're not using like exact beats, but it's an interesting experiment either way. So try and, putting your grid like this and compose something. And I guarantee it would sound like nothing you've ever done before. So splitting your entire grid into 5s. Might be difficult for your friends to jam along to this, just unless your friends are crazy rhythmic geniuses. So let's talk about ghost notes. So for that matter, I'm gonna just fill in 4 hi-hats and let's do a kick pattern that maybe is slightly more interesting than before. Let's do 1 leading to here. And then let's just listen to this for a second. Okay, I kind of dig this. Maybe the one thing I would change is open hi-hat here. Cool. So what I'm about to do is just use the 4 subdivision, so 16th notes throughout here, because that would allow me to experiment with ghost notes. So I'm going to take the velocity, standard velocity here, and push it way down, just so it's every note that I place on the snare is going to be a ghost note. Let's say like 30. Let's listen to it for a second. That's perfect. Ghost notes can appear on basically any instrument, but they're most commonly referenced in snare and kick drum. They're sometimes referred as grace notes. I don't know. That's at least the names that I know of. Let me know if you have any others. Having a firm grasp of where to place them is fairly important. Now, usually you would reserve the first 16th note of a bar for the main beat. So if I place a ghost note there, let's check this out for a second. It sort of steals the thunder for the third beat here, the snare, the downbeat here. So I'm usually trying to avoid these locations unless the beat is very convoluted, and then this may, kind of sound like it's a unique position. So if none of the downbeats are where they're supposed to be, then I might use this position. But otherwise, check this out. So this sounds like a classic position for a ghost note. It's the second 16th note. Let's check out the third 16th note. Let's see what happens if I place a ghost note here and then do 3 slices, so 3 16th notes, and then place again 1, 2, 3. There we go. The snare is starting to be a bit, predictable, and sometimes we do want to have the sensation of the ghost notes being wild and random. So let's see how we can do that. The way I like to do it again is use a big backbeat here. You know what? Let's do a snare on the 4. Give us a little bit more room, okay? And let's start by filling in just 2nd and 4th 16th note here. That's cool. And then let's switch it around. Let's do 3rd here, and then go back to 2nd and 4th. Let's do 4th here, and then do again 2nd, 4th, 3rd, 2, 4th, and 4th. Randomizing the amount of space between ghost notes will create this sort of sensation of randomness and excitement that you might be looking for when you're trying to compose with ghost notes. And that's even without handling the bass drum right here. Let me show you something cool you can do with Beat Scholar that might open up your mind about composing in this way. So I'm going to remove the kick lane, and let's just compose our entire kick and snare on this 16th note pattern. So I'm going to place kicks on, let me just switch it back up to 110 or something. I'm going to place kicks here. 1, and this. And let's do the main beats of the snare on the 2 and 4. And go back to our ghost note dynamic, which is like 30. I don't know, I can go 25 even. I'm going to apply the same concepts, but only now I also have to account for where the kick drum is hitting. 3rd 16th note here, and I do want to create that sort of wonky feeling. So there's like 2 slices between the ghost note and the main snare, and then let's do 3 slices, and then that means here again 1 slice and then kick snare. So this is the next main beat. So I want to place this one over here, and placing a ghost note just before a kick drum is a really good idea. You'll listen to why in a second. And then kick, let's do this, and then here leave this empty. Now check this out. So this is a single artifact here that has a kick drum, 2 16th notes that are ghost notes, and then a kick ghost note before the snare. So this is like almost a drum fill within the beat here. And listen to how cool this sounds. So let's keep this up. Let's try and make a beat that actually uses every 16th note. So we can vary between ghost notes on the kick and snare. This is so awesome. So what you're listening to here is basically the dynamic variation and the instrumentation, the variation in between kick and snare creates this sort of interesting feeling of energy flowing between, the downbeats. So it's pretty cool because you can think about it as sort of a 2-note melody that I'm composing here, and I'm trying to keep it interesting. So I'm changing around the order, and I'm changing around the spacing. So let's say there's like 2 snares and 2 kicks here, and here it's the same thing but sort of inverted. Let's keep this going. Let's do like a little fill here. So this would be like a professional funk drummer, Steve Gadd sort of approach to playing a groove, maybe with some spaced out keys or piano on top, maintaining this throughout a song and not being really super like cumbersome on your ears. The way to do it would be to stack the bass on top of this really accurately, either space it out, like the bass would play long notes, like quarter notes at minimum, either that or just play super tight with everything going on top of it. You can think about like funk music where, the bass is playing a 16th note pattern and then there's like a clavinet or something just playing, again, 16th notes, so everybody is like ticking along on 16th notes. So this is a really cool way actually to work, because you do see the relationship here between kick and snare on every beat instead of seeing it separated. And it does make sure you minimize the amount of overlaps. It's sort of a linear approach to beat making. It's something that Beat Scholar makes readily available for you. I try to account for the positions of the main beats, and I try to understand if what I'm looking to get from the ghost notes is the feeling of excitement and randomness, or if I'm trying to create an internal pattern that actually makes everything feel like it's working in a more organized way. So you get more points of reference within the bar and more patterns that your ear can lock into, and then you can also sort of connect other instruments into those points. So like I showed before, if a ghost note appears every second 16th note or every third 16th note, that creates another source of reference that you can actually connect another instrument to. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll try and make more of these available for you guys. And see you in the next one.